high degree of reliability correlate that entry to exit stream. So in that sense, an external adversary is able to do that without necessarily running any nodes, but surveilling one of the, as was mentioned earlier, one of the internet exchange points that were discussed in this morning's talk. So okay, so the things look pretty abysmal up to this point. So what are some of the approaches that are done to try and improve that picture? Verifying node operators used to be done. It seems to be kind of anathema, yes, to an anonymity network to try and do that. Also, the network is just growing large enough that this has become a practical difficulty to verify everybody that runs a node. So that is pretty much no longer being done. Although people who do this get certain preferences, like being able to be certain that nobody else can take their node nickname and other such things. Path selection hacks are another. There's a couple of path selection hacks for trying to avoid situations where it's clear that an external adversary would be able to observe both the entry and exit. Tore up from the floor up. This was the slogan of Anonymous, I believe, by the chaos theory people. The idea is to create a bootable CD or some kind of router or some kind of thing that handles all your Tor connections for you. There's multiple different ways that this sort of idea can take. Pretty much anything that can go through Tor is shoved through Tor, and anything else is just dropped on the floor. Node scanning is one way that we can try and detect people who are maliciously modifying content, maliciously modifying circuits and failing circuits, or trying to do guard node bias and such things. Improving network speed and reliability is also an important property to try and encourage more users to use Tor, and securing the applications is sort of the answer to application layer attacks. Unfortunately, we're dealing with a different threat model there, so there's some subtleties need to be addressed. So path selection hacks. What sort of things does Tor currently do? /16 hack is basically the idea is that don't choose in a single path. Don't choose any two nodes from the same /16 net mask, so that presumably an ISP that is surveilling their traffic wouldn't be able to do these correlations. The problem is that a lot of ISPs do have disjoint IP ranges, and you can always go up another layer on or up another layer on the internet hierarchy, I guess, and target those internet exchange points. Guard nodes. I've been sort of calling nodes guards without really explaining what they are. I was saving it for this slide. They are a sort of a path selection hack, essentially, to try and pick a fixed set, a small set, 2 to 3 nodes that come from the top 50% uptime and top 50% bandwidth, so that they're presumably more reliable and able to carry traffic for a long period of time, unlikely to go down. These were originally developed, I believe, to protect against Paul Syverson's and Lasse Oliver's attack against hidden services, which are essentially hidden websites inside Tor. Attack was mounted to repeatedly fetch hidden service pages until the client chose a circuit for their hidden service that had a guard or a first hop that the adversary controlled and was able to recognize the timing pattern as being identical to one for the hidden service page that they were trying to fetch. This sort of attack was adapted to the external internet by Tim Abbott et al. From MIT, I believe, at PET 2007, to insert JavaScript and meta refresh information so that a exit node or website could cause you to continually refresh or make new connections through Tor. And without guard nodes, this sort of behavior, continual fetching, would cause you to choose new circuits over the course of those multiple fetches and choose a first hop that then the adversary was able to do the timing correlation between their multiple fetches that they were inducing and the traffic entering their node. This sort of hack also can reduce long-term fingerprinting attacks. An adversary that's interested in correlating traffic just of a few users sometimes can run a couple of guard nodes and just wait for arbitrary users to fetch a document through Tor that they recognize the fingerprint of, and they can just try and harass those users. Guard nodes can mitigate this in a couple of ways, in that if you're trying to stay with your fixed set of nodes, you can go to trust those after a while. You can, if such an attack were to go down, a rational user could say, well, if I wasn't fingerprinted in this attack, I wasn't harassed, I therefore have a larger degree in my trust in my guard nodes over time. And it also just helps to generally limit exposure to that entire network for those sorts of attacks. There are some issues with this. Nodes do go up and down, so they can rotate. Your guard nodes can rotate over time, and there have been a couple of fixes recently to Tor to try and limit this sort of rotation. Tor routers and live CDs. I sort of group these all together. Again, the Janus VM, AnonymOS, also to be released at DEF CON, I think Zero Bank Virtual Machine sort of falls into this category. These are pre-configured systems that essentially try to route all your traffic through Tor. Now, whether they're like a gateway device or whether they're a virtual machine that you boot into and you load up and then use that for your Tor activity, they essentially function the same way, in that they're going to try and address these application layer attacks where things might bypass proxy settings by blocking all this stuff that doesn't fit through Tor. So that you won't have any of these Tor bypass issues. There is a potential, or rather a significant flaw in this, especially for these devices that don't allow finer grain control of your Tor activity, that circuit reuse, the circuit multiplexing property of Tor, as I showed on the earlier slides, can be a potential source of app correlation. Like if you're using an AIM client that has your name in it, or you're SSHing to a machine that your physical identity controls, or using an email account of one of your non-anonymous NIMs. Those can be correlated with your anonymous activity. Antivirus software updates can have this property as well. Now, there's a feature, for those of you who use Tor, there's a new identity option on Vidalia, the Tor user interface, that allows you to refresh your circuits. But if you have like a router that you just plugged in and are hoping that all your Tor traffic is going to now go through this router and everything's going to be grand, if there's no interface to say that I have a new identity, then there is this circuit correlation problem. So centralized network scanning. So I've done a fair amount of this. Basically, this revolves around the Tor control port. So I think this thing is pretty neat. I'm really glad that it exists. It allows you to sort of take a lower level approach to your Tor usage, but also at the same time you're not actually writing a complete Tor client. It allows you to do things like build the specific circuits or paths through Tor. It allows you to attach what streams you want to these paths, and it allows you to have events for failures on circuits. So you can say, okay, well, this circuit failed when I was trying to extend to such and such a node. I can record that failure and note that this failure happened and build statistics this way. I can also measure the bandwidth. There's bandwidth events for streams. So you can say, okay, well, this stream exhibited this amount of bandwidth while I was using it. So Snakes on a Tor and TorFlow were a couple of the projects that I developed for scanning the network in this way. Snakes on the Tor, the goal essentially of that was to verify the MD5 sums of the of random URLs. The idea is to detect nodes that are modifying content, or in other words, to get the motherfucking snakes off the motherfucking Tor. It also sort of grew into this thing where I realized, okay, I could also verify the node reliability and verify bandwidth and try and detect liars, and these sorts of things. There are some issues with this. One of the main downsides is that, well, I guess we could talk about some of the weaker adversaries that were detected with this. First of all, there was a Chinese ISP, not the Tor node, but the ISP was doing man-in-the-middle on SSL traffic, basically giving snake oil self-signed certificates for websites, so that you visit https mail.google.com and you'd get a certificate that was signed by mail.google.com rather than VeriSign or whatever. And so I was able to detect this by just basically comparing the SSL certs that I fetched outside of Tor to the ones that I had fetched through Tor. We also found nodes that were blocking pop-ups. A couple of Windows machines are apparently running antivirus software that inserts JavaScript pop-up blocking code. There was another node. This was a little bit more interesting. The Google Analytics stuff. The stuff that the Google JavaScript glue code that gives you all this information about what your users are doing on your website. This node was stripping out all of that, so that when you visited those sites through this particular exit node, the Google Analytics stuff just wasn't being run, which I thought that was possibly broken, but possibly amusing and interesting at the same time. Some other stuff, we did find some nodes that were spoofing SSH keys, that were providing garbage SSH keys. They didn't seem to actually be doing much with them. Like, it didn't seem to actually be able to complete the man-in-the-middle to the second hop, or to your actual SSH host, but definitely a fake SSH key was presented. The problem with this sort of scanning, though, is that a targeted adversary, someone who's targeting specific users who speak a language that that the scanner is not familiar with, is not able to issue these Google queries to get these arbitrary URLs. They can be attacked, and we just won't see that attack happening because we're not scanning for the URLs in those languages, for example. And it's also vulnerable to detection in a number of ways. So this is essentially the image of the arms race that centralized scanning faces. The things that it can detect are illustrated on top. I don't know if you can read all that. Basically, the node bias and connectivity issue is something that you can detect while you continually are connecting to all these guard nodes. If some of them appear down from your scanner, or you have general connectivities to some of them, you can notice that maybe guard nodes themselves have firewalls for all but the clients that they want to accept. The other thing is circuit failure and bandwidth lying. As I mentioned, you can detect these. You get the event